So today we have for you Acharya Raghu Ganapati ji, who will be talking to us on managing stress. This is part 2 of the program, and recorded version of part 1 is available on YouTube already under Ritambra Wellness. I'd just like to tell you a few protocols and the way we'll structure the program today before we have Shri Amit ji introduce our speaker today. So we have 45 minutes of talk, and it will be followed by 15 minutes of question and answer. But please stay muted through the talk. Our sincere request to you is please stay muted because what happens is that we are recording this and we do not want any interruptions. You can feel free also to post your questions on the chat function here right through the talk. And at the end of the talk, Acharya Raghu Ganapati ji will take up the questions one by one and answer them for you. So now on to today's program, and may I call Mr. Amit Dasgupta, a very senior faculty with us at Ritambra Wellness, to introduce today's speaker. Amit ji.
Thank you, Beena. And I'm really happy to introduce Sri Acharya Raghu Ganapati ji for today's webinar. He has been Advaita Vedanta philosophy consultant and also a scholar, practitioner and teacher of the Advaita non-dual Vedanta philosophy. That is the spiritual knowledge expounded in the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita. He has formally learnt Veda mantras from Sringeri Shankara Met, and he has also undergone intensive training and learnings on Vedanta and advanced Sanskrit from Arsha Vidya Gurukulam at Coimbatore. The study included the Sanskrit commentaries of Sri Adi Shankaracharya on Vedantic texts and Bhagavad Gita. Along with these studies, he also learned Sanskrit language with Paninian grammar. So another small note I would like to add that whoever has been present in the earlier talks of Sri Ganapati ji would have realized the practical messages that he gives in very simple language. And so I welcome Sri Ganapati ji to give his talk today, and I'm sure all of you will enjoy it as you have done before. Over to you, Ganapati ji.
Thank you, Amit ji. Thank you, Beena ji. Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. I once again thank the Ritambra team for giving me this yet again one more opportunity to share my learning, my thoughts with you all. And also I extend my greetings to all of you on this auspicious day of Varalakshmi Vrata Puja. And Beena ji had earlier requested me to say a few words about this, the significance of this festival. So I will share with you whatever little I know about this festival. The word Vara means a boon. And it's the same word in Hindi also. Rebako, the pronunciation is little different. It's a Var. It's a Vardhan. And in Tamil also it is called Varam. So the word Vara is, I think, probably Sanskrit origin. So it means a boon. And Lakshmi, of course, we all know is goddess Mahalakshmi, the consort of Vishnu, Mahavishnu. So Varalakshmi means the goddess who grants boons, right? So that is the significance of the name of the word, this Varalakshmi Puja. So it's a prayer to the goddess who grants all sorts of boons to us. And there is a mention of such a puja in the Skanda Purana, where Parvati is supposed to have done a similar puja and seeking prosperity and happiness for herself. That's some reference in Skanda Purana. And there is also a story of a lady or a woman called Charumati. And this story goes back to the Magadha Empire, long back, which is now, I think, somewhere in Maharashtra, Amaravati or some area, that area. So this lady was a very devout and, very pious lady. And it seems one day in her dreams, this is the story goes, Goddess Mahalakshmi appeared and advised her to worship Varalakshmi and seek her blessings to fulfill all her wishes. So she shared this dream with her family members and also the villagers, and they all got together, and this lady with the other women folk of the village is seen to have performed this puja. And that, to my mind, seems to be the origin of this puja in the modern times rather. And we all know that Goddess Lakshmi is associated with wealth, right? But in the context of this puja, it is believed that this puja to Goddess Varalakshmi actually is to the 8 forms of the Goddess Lakshmi and seeking all-round blessings for our wellness. So this Varalakshmi puja is actually a Ashtalakshmi puja, means 8 forms of Mahalakshmi are worshipped. Now what are these Ashtalakshmis? First is Mahalakshmi herself, who is called Adi Lakshmi. She is the protector along with Mahavishnu. The second is the goddess of wealth, who is called Dhanalakshmi. The third is the goddess of what you can call nourishment, or goddess of all that is required for our health, which is Dhanya Lakshmi, I mean the food that we eat. The fourth is the goddess of courage, Dhairya Lakshmi. And the fifth is Saubhagya Lakshmi, or people also call Gaja Lakshmi, which is the goddess of prosperity. And then the sixth is goddess of victory, Vijaya Lakshmi. Then goddess of progeny, Santana Lakshmi. And last but not the least, the goddess of wisdom, Vidya Lakshmi. So these are the 8 forms of Goddess Mahalakshmi which are worshipped on this Varalakshmi day by all the people. And the prayer is seeking blessings for all-round wellness. So it's very relevant for Ritambara wellness. This is a prayer I think everybody should do. Wellness, prosperity, and all success in life, you can say that. And one of the very significant features of this puja is that this is one of those pujas which are reserved to be performed exclusively by women. Men cannot perform this Varalakshmi puja, only women can perform, and that too married women have to perform this puja. And if the women of the women, they are not married, they can join their mothers in performing the puja. So there are a few pujas in our culture which are reserved exclusively for women. So one cannot say that there is no gender inequality in our culture. So that is actually completely demolished by such practices. And this puja actually is quite popular in South India. Except I think in Kerala, they don't do that. And also I believe in parts of Maharashtra, this puja is quite popular. And this puja falls on the preceding Friday of the full moon of this current Adi month. In Tamil it is called Adi. I think it is called Shravan month, or So in that month, the Friday which falls before the full moon day, this puja is conducted. So let us, I will offer prayers on this auspicious occasion to Goddess Lakshmi on all your behalf. So those who know these prayers, please join me. Otherwise, you just listen and then be mentally with the with the prayers. Namaste Mahamaye Sripite Surapujide Shankha Chakra Gadahaste Mahalakshmi Namostute Lakshmim Kshira Samudra Rajatanayam Sri Rangadhameshwarim Dasi Bhuta Samasta Deva Vanitam Lokaika Deepankuram Sri Manmanta Katakshalabdha Vibhava Brahmendra Gangadharam Tvam Trailokya Kudumbinim Sarasijam Vande Mukunda Priyam Mathar Namami Kamale Kamalayakakshi Sri Vishnu Krit Kamala Vasini Vishwamata Kshirodaje Kamala Komala Garbha Gauri Lakshmi Prasida Satatam Namatam Sharanye. So this is the prayer that I have offered to Mahalakshmi for wellness, prosperity, success for all the people, not only who are present here, as we say, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. So everybody in the world, whenever we offer any prayer, it is not a personal prayer, it is always for the well-being of all, not only human beings, but all living beings, all non-living beings in the world. The entire environment of the universe is what we pray for. So with that prayer, we'll now enter our topic for today. And that is, as you all know, managing stress, part 2, right? On 10th of July, we had the first part, and where I briefly dealt with the important causes of stress in our life. And also, I dealt with in some detail the solution to the one of the important causes. And I'll just recap for the sake of continuity what we spoke there. The first cause was interaction with the world or relating to the world during our waking hours. So this I said was the main and most important cause for our stress. And the second cause I cited was procrastination. The third was helpless situations like what we are facing now, like this corona and all. There are so many helpless situations in our life we face. So that also causes stress. And the fourth one, again, very important one, I mentioned was arguments. And while speaking about this, what we can do about this, I only dealt with one cause, which is the interaction with the world or relating to the world, and how we can sort of protect ourselves or what we can do to manage the stress which comes out of this interaction with the world. So the solutions from a spiritual angle which was offered was keeping the external world external. Number two, understanding that one is a very simple, basic, relaxed person. Most importantly, then understanding role play. And then I said, when you understand role play, it is necessary to create a space between you as a simple, basic person and the various roles that you play while relating to the world. As Dayanand Swami, my guru, says, convert your life into role playing. Play the role, but don't become the role. It is wonderful to play the role of a father, mother, etc. But if you become the father or mother, you will have permanent stress about the children, now, later the grandchildren, and after some time, if you survive long enough, the great-grandchildren. You will keep on worrying about what is happening to them, what is not happening to them, and that will create a lot of stress in you. Therefore, play the role and forget. Whenever you are not playing the role, the mind should not be preoccupied with the role. That is a very, very important practice that we can follow to sort of reduce the stress which we experience from relating to the work. And then I also mentioned about accepting others as they are, understanding the futility of trying to change others. I gave some examples also. And then lastly, giving freedom to others to be what they are, and in the process, becoming free from all our, the stressful situations, becoming free in all our relationships. So this was all broadly what we discussed in the last session. Now today, we will go into the second part where we will try to analyze how to insulate ourselves from the stress caused by the remaining three causes, which are procrastination, helpless situations, and arguments. When I talked about procrastination, I mentioned that procrastination is the habit of deferring without any valid reason what one needs to do. This habit actually is found in everyone. Let's admit it, right? But in some, this is very pronounced, and some people have it as a very mild version. The mild version doesn't cause any stress. They just actually enjoy this procrastination. I will do it a little later. But people who are habituated to this procrastination, they fall a prey to a lot of stress which this particular habit gives rise to. And it is very easy to identify such people. All that you need to do is look at their habit of waking up in the morning. Once they have woken up, are they continuing to lie in the bed without getting up and going about their day's routine? So if they are awake, but they somehow, they don't want to get up from the bed and go about. This is one indication of such people who are suffering from this procrastination bad habit, I would call it. And then there is also another set of people I have observed. The following day, they may have something important to do in the morning. So they will set the alarm for, say, let us say 6 o'clock. And the clock, very faithfully, it will go off at 6 o'clock. The alarm will go off. But these people will put it on snooze. And this snoozing business may even go on for the next 1 hour. Every 10 minutes, they will keep it on snooze, and then instead of getting up at 6 a.m., they will, with great difficulty, try to get up at 7 a.m. With the result what? Whatever purpose they had put that alarm for 6 a.m. would be defeated. They would probably miss the deadline for what they were supposed to do, and that itself will cause a lot of stress. We have seen this in a lot of college students, just 10 minutes before they will get up and immediately, do the brush and then, put on the whatever dress they get hold of and rush to the classroom. So these are some of the indicators of such people who fall prey to this habit and invite stress. And we have seen this in also many students rather. Whole year they will not touch their books. But just maybe a week or few days before the examination, they will suddenly remember that I have got this examination. And they will take all their books and start studying. So what they will find? There is so much to cover, so much they don't know, and then what results is total stress. Even whatever they know, they will tend to forget when they are stressed out. And in the examination also, they will fare badly. So this procrastination business is one of the main reasons for stress, and we need to avoid this. In fact, I will quote one more statement of Dayanand Swami. He says that once someone said to him, Swamiji, I listened to your talks on this procrastination. They were very good points you made. So I have decided to follow it from the next month. So Swamiji says, This is exactly a very solid sign of someone who procrastinates. If you like something, if you believe something, why can't you do it from the next moment? Why next month, right? So this is the worst cause of stress. And as I said, this stress of procrastination affects us in all walks of our life. It leads to more and more stress in other areas also. Because our life is a series of decisions. And as an individual, I have to make decisions. And I find it very, very difficult to make decisions or to take painful decisions. Decisions which are very painful to me, which I don't actually like to take. I try to procrastinate taking such painful decisions. If the thing which I want to do is, I like it very much, then there is no question of procrastination. I will do it very fast, and in fact, very promptly I will do such things. So if you observe, many times this happens only when we have to take some unsavory or painful decisions in our life. So what is the solution? The solution is that if you want to overcome this habit of procrastination, take all the painful decisions first, because other decisions you can always take later. You will not procrastinate on that, but you must force yourself. If you don't like to do something, do that now. That is what. And if it should be something which should be done. I mean, not that you don't like to do something means you don't like to smoke, so you do smoke now. That's not what I mean. Something which you are required to do, duty bound to do, but you don't like doing it, you should force yourself to do it now. This is very, very important. And for that, willpower is a very, very important ingredient. So we have to develop that willpower in order to come out of these problems given by this procrastination problem. And that is why, if you observe, in the Vedic lifestyle, they had this system of samskaras right from the young age of 8 years, 9 years and all. The boys used to be put through a samskara which is called Upanayanam and Brahmopatesham and all that. And they will be sent to the Gurukula. And in the Gurukula, they are supposed to do all these prayers and all that before the sunrise. So even when the stars are seen in the sky, they are supposed to do their Sandhya Vandana karma in the morning. So if that is to happen, they have to still get up early, finish all their morning chores, and then be ready for that. So whether they like it or not, and they were under the guidance of a guru, and who will make them do these things initially, it would be a very big change from the lifestyle which they enjoyed at their home as a child. Now that, initially they may not like it, they may resist it, but over a period of time, when you continue to do these things, they become a habit. And so the procrastination habit doesn't creep in at all. And everything that you have to do during the day, you will promptly do it, even without being prompted to do that, right? So this was the lifestyle which was there, and everybody, this problem was not there. This procrastination problem has come only because of our urban and metropolitan living rather, right? In Vedic lifestyle, this was not a problem at all. But anyhow, we have the problem, so we have to face it. So it is always better. If we have missed the bus, we can actually inculcate this habit in our grandchildren or small children, and they can then get a value out of this throughout their life. So this is, it is necessary to make a very conscious attempt to make changes in one's life, and with enough practice, it can be done. I mean, I have seen a lot of people, they used to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then they decided that from tomorrow, I'm going to wake up earlier. It may not be possible in one shot. Slowly, this has happened. And today, such people, they get up at 4:30 in the morning and go about a walk and things like that and all. So it's not difficult to change our habits, provided, as I said in the last talk, abhyasena tu kaunteya. You just have to keep on practicing, right? You cannot change other people's habit, but you can change your own habit, which is totally under your control. And the mind, let me tell you, is a very powerful instrument. You can make the mind, if you are in control of your mind, you can guide that mind to do anything. In fact, when I learned yoga, for the asanas also, my teacher used to tell me, make up your mind for the next asana. Once you have made up your mind for the next asana, you have actually visualized that asana, then the asana, doing that asana becomes very easy. So the mind, and yoga is all about connecting your mind to the body. Yogasanas are nothing but connecting your mind to the body. You have to be totally with your body, with your breathing, and always focus on all the stress which is happening in all the parts of the body and try to relieve those stress. That's physically, yogasana helps in physical stress management. What I am of course talking about is emotional stress. But for both of them, mind is a powerful instrument. So this is about procrastination. Now I will briefly talk about helpless situations. And helpless situation, there is nothing much we can do about it because they are helpless situations. If they were helpful, we could have done something, isn't it? So as I said in my previous session, in today's world, this internet, email, and all these things, they are so much of information overload that itself is a cause for all our stress that we face. As I said, we want the politicians to be non-corrupt, but we find that all politicians, maybe with some exceptions, are corrupt, right? And normally people have come to accept it, rather than these are shameless people and whatever you do, nothing is going to happen, nothing is going to change and all that, right? So when we actually look at some of the debates which is going on the TV, or when we get some WhatsApp messages or some Facebook postings and all, it's natural for a reaction to happen, and that itself could actually lead to a lot of stress in us as to we are in such a helpless situation that we are being governed by such people. And once you start thinking about it, then you can see how the corruption which is there at their level can even affect us on our day-to-day life. And all these things cause a lot of stress in us, right? And that's why, recently, a lot of people are advising that don't read too much about this corona and, what is happening. Don't follow all this because you can't do anything about it. Sitting at your home, all that you can do is protect yourself from this corona. If there is 1 lakh cases being added every day, what can you do about it? Nothing. So don't take too much of stress. If you see people are being careless, it's their fate. I mean, we can't do anything about it. So that is why, try to reduce your interaction with these kind of things which have a potential to cause a lot of stress in you. But if you continue to remain in a helpless state, then stress will naturally be there. So there is something, though you cannot change the situation, certainly something you can do about it. And my Guruji says that is why we have got these letters to those days, of course, letters to the editor column, right? If you are feeling strongly about it, you write a letter to the editor of some Times of India or Hindustan Times or some newspaper, and then your stress is relieved. Okay, I have done my part. I have written to the letters to the editor. It will be published and all the world will come to know what my views are on this particular matter. Those days were there. These days we have got much more opportunities to express all your pent-up frustrations through maybe Facebook postings or even WhatsApp messages you can send. But one thing you must be careful: whenever you express something publicly, you must expect some reactions to that. But you must ignore those reactions, because if you start reacting to the reactions, then you are going to back to the square one rather. So you will get more stress about those things. So this is something that we can do. And of course, one thing we can do is we can pray. We can pray for all those people the causes for stress, who are getting stressed themselves and passing on their stress to others also. We can pray that all these politicians, may Goddess Lakshmi give them enough wealth on this day of this Varalakshmi Vrita, so that they don't become greedy and again go to all corrupt practices and all that. That prayer, because prayer also is an action which is under your control, you can always pray. And I can tell you, prayer actually is a very soothing and very stress relieving practice. That's why, in our culture, prayer is one of the very important things everyone should do every day. Rather, you should allocate certain time in your day for prayers and have that, one-to-one interaction with God. That is very, very psychologically very soothing to our mind. And this is what we can do about helpless situations. We just try to relieve those stress due to the situations in the best possible manner. Now we come to the most common cause of stress, which is somewhat related to the first one, which is interaction with the world. But this is more specific, relating to arguments. Because we find ourselves at home, in office, or even in public places rather, in situations which are potentially very, what I would call, potentially a bomb rather, like, argument can immediately flare up rather. So this is a very, very common cause where it can, if you get into an argument, it can increase the stress to a very, very great extent. And mind you, many arguments, they start innocently like a discussion, but it will end up many times in heated exchange of words. So therefore, we need to be very, very aware when the discussion ends and when the argument begins. So this is the first thing in an argument that we have to be very, very careful. Discussions do not cause any stress, but arguments do. And a discussion is very helpful. Actually, discussion, I would say, is very healthy also. Through discussion, one gets, a different perspective of what one is thinking, if you have an open mind. And you can look at a particular situation differently. Your objectivity increases. And many times you get to learn a lot of new things through discussions rather, right? And that's why, our entire teaching tradition, Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita also is through discussions. Samvadaha, it's what called, right? Not vadaha. Vadaha means argument. Samvadaha means a discussion, right? As we see in Bhagavad Gita also, at the end of each chapter, it's a samvada. Krishna Arjuna Samvade, it says. So samvada is always good, it's always helpful. What we should avoid is a vada, right? And there is one more word in Sanskrit for this vada, which is called jalpa. I'll come to that little later. So as I was saying, in a discussion, one can appreciate other man's point of view, and there is no victory for anyone, right? There is a mutual understanding, and both of them in a discussion go away more enriched with the knowledge or information which they have gained. Now, in a jalpa or a vada or an argument, the whole attempt is to win. It is not to learn. And never accept defeat. In fact, if you have observed in an argument, when you have made a point, when the other person is, giving the counter point, your mind is thinking of what to counter that fellow. Instead of actually listening to what he is saying and appreciating whether there is any merit in what he says or not, your mind is thinking, oh, this fellow has come with this point, I should now counter that with something, right? So this is the typical, if you are into that kind of a mood, you are into an argument situation, better get out of it fast, right? And what happens? as it develops, you lose your temper, other fellow loses his temper, undesirable things are said. From a topic which started as a discussion, turned into an argument, now this could even become very personal rather, right? You start abusing the other person's family and he start abusing your family, and it will all become very ugly and, you know, very, very bad. So one tends to become very defensive in an argument. And people will think that the best form of defense is offense. So even before the other fellow starts saying anything, let me attack him. So this is all, you know, the way the argument process goes on. So when you are interacting with other people, wherever it is, you have to be very mindful about when it is turning to an argument. In fact, Dayanand Swami says that when you sense that an argument is in the offing, change the topic. Ask the other person whether he will have coffee or tea or with sugar or without sugar, or, you know, something, talk about the weather, something which is will stop that situation turning into an argument, and then convert that situation into a more pleasant kind of a situation. Actually, long ago, when I was in my early 20s, I was working in the central government office, in a ministry. There, I had a boss. He was a nice guy, a very soft guy from Kerala. And he was always cool. I have never seen him stressed or, anxious about anything. I thought, okay, government, everybody is like that only, they are stress-free rather. But then I had two colleagues of mine who were, of course, my same, and this fellow was their boss also. But these two colleagues, I used to observe that they will actually misbehave with him a lot. In fact, sometimes abuse him and, say a lot of denigrating things about him and all that. In fact, the saddest thing was that this fellow did not have any children. And these two colleagues of mine will make fun of him that he is not having any children. It was very sad, I used to feel so bad. But I was a very young fellow, so, I was also a little bit afraid that if I speak up and all that, what will happen? So, but he will, whatever these people do, he will not react at all. Then I was thinking that this fellow must be a very timid guy. He must be sort of a meek guy. Doesn't want to take on these people. So, but then one day I couldn't, control my curiosity. So I asked him. I said, sir, these people are talking so much of nonsense to you, but you don't seem to react at all. Why is that? What is the reason? And he told me, Ganapati, as you see, I also see what these people are doing. Perhaps they are thinking that this is a government setup, so I can't do anything about, to them. I can't fire them and all. That's why they are doing all these things. I can also react to all these fellows. But the thing is, if I start reacting, it will grow into a more ugly situations and it will bring more things out and all that, and we will end up in a very, very, what we would call, any very, very bad situation we will end up in. And probably, such a thing will go up, it can be escalated upwards and all that. So he said that, whenever such things happen, I refuse to get provoked. These were some wonderful words. I have never heard, somebody saying that I have the power to refuse to get provoked, whatever be the provocation. And if you have that power in you, if you refuse to get provoked, then you can avoid all arguments and you can avoid all the stress which is coming out of that argument. In fact, at an early age, that was one of the most important lessons that I learned, that if you want to avoid arguments or any, this kind of public spat and all that, refuse to get provoked, let anybody say anything. And in fact, he gave a very good example. He says, if a dog barks looking at the sun, nothing will happen to the sun. The dog will keep on barking. After some time, it will become tired and keep quiet. but the sun will keep on shining every day as it shines. So that was a good example he gave me, and I really liked that example, and that was a great lesson for me. And there is another thing we have to be very aware of. There are some people you will come across who love arguments. In fact, it is their pastime to argue with people. And I can tell you without any mistake, in Tamil Nadu, especially in matters of religion, this is very, very common, right? So in Coimbatore, I was sitting with one person, and this person, of course, was a religious, a spiritually evolved guy. I mean, he was a sort of a Mahatma, very senior guy. I was sitting with him and talking to him. Then another person joined us. When that person joined us, I sensed that this fellow is somehow come here to create some trouble. But I kept quiet because I was sitting with this Mahatma. So that person asked this Mahatma, sir, can I ask you one very simple question? Mahatma ji said, yes, ask. He says, where is God? Oh, I knew. Now this is, this fellow has started this business. So Mahatma ji said, God is everywhere. So this fellow said, if God is everywhere, then why should one go to temple to pray to the God? See, very fantastic. Now this will go into an argument. I knew that, but I was really surprised. The Mahatma kept cool. Then he asked him, he said, I will ask you one question. He said, yeah, ask, where is air? He said, air is everywhere. If air is everywhere, when it is hot, why do you sit under a ceiling fan? Why can't you just be without a ceiling fan? You find answer to that question, and you will automatically get the answer to your question as to why you should go to temple to pray to God. So I felt that, this was a very potential situation which was about to develop, and by all this questioning, then he will say God, and which that, so many things. I mean, I'm sure you people are all familiar with all sorts of things which are going on in Tamil Nadu now. So this situation, I was impressed that, how a spiritually evolved person avoids such kind of situations, how to come out of, a potentially developing argumentative situation. So this is something, again, I learned from that Mahatma. So in any situation, we have to be very careful. We have to be very mindful and aware. When a discussion, a simple discussion turns into an argument, and this, I can tell you, 90% we can observe it in our own homes, especially between spouses, and it will start somewhere else, and it will go into, there is no salt in the food, or your father used to do this, or your mother has this habit, and all these kind of things, ultimately end up in a lot of stress for both the people. So if you want to avoid, even one person is mindful of this, this whole situation can be managed even at home very, very successful, right? So for a spiritual seeker, basically, this argumentative, habit is one of the, or I would say, the most biggest obstacle for spiritual progress. You cannot, a spiritual seeker, whatever may be his learning, his knowledge, it is not necessary that you must actually, if you have knowledge, you must go on sharing with everybody, right? That's why Adi Shankaracharya, in a very beautiful text containing 40 sadhanas for a spiritual seeker called Sadhana Panchakam, he says one of the best practices a spiritual seeker, or one of the sadhanas he should do, is Vritha Vakya na Samucharyatam. Vritha Vakya means speaking anything unnecessary. That is a very important sadhana. Speak only what is necessary. And as somebody said, when it is not necessary to talk, it is necessary not to talk. This is very, very important. So if you are not required to talk, don't open your mouth, right? Because many people have this habit. They will give unsolicited advice. If you have a common cold and you happen to meet 10 people, all the 10 people will give you medication, different medication, that actually if you take all that, the cold can turn into pneumonia also, rather, right? So this is one of the important things that we have to understand, that we should never ever impose ourselves upon others, because the moment you start doing that, you are giving room to a potential argument situation. And this mistake we do many times with our children, right? When they don't ask you for advice, especially when they are grown up. Young children, I can understand in their growing up years, in their formative years, you have to tell them what to do, what not to do, and all. But if they have grown up and all that, and if they have not sought your advice, what is the point in just telling them, going on telling them, do this, don't do that, don't keep this there, don't keep that there, you must sleep at 9 o'clock at night and all that. They are grown up, they know what they want to do. And everybody of us, each one of us comes here born with our own samskaras. As I said, if you realize that you want to change, you will change. If you realize that you don't want to change, nobody can change you. So these are the things, we must avoid. And later on say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that, please pardon me. All these things will become apologies, will become unnecessary if you are mindful of that. So the first rule we must follow in all our conversations is make sure that every word that you speak is well edited, well filtered, well processed, well censored, and well monitored. So think before you speak. Every word, it applies to that, because many times once you are emotionally charged, some word may come out of your mouth, and that itself, that word may be the real cause for causing a huge argument between the other person. So we have to be very careful about that. So first condition. And second condition is, if you want to tell somebody something, make sure that that person has got respect for your words. Isn't it? Whether he wants your words or not. If he doesn't want it, what is the point in your going on telling, because it may not be relevant at all. Even though you may feel that your advice is relevant, the other person also should feel that what advice I am getting is relevant and he is interested in that advice. So don't give any unwanted advice, because that is a very potential stressful, it could lead to stressful situations. And we can see this example in Bhagavad Gita, right? Classic example. Arjuna, right from the beginning of the first chapter, is going on blabbering. First he has come with very lot of courage that I'm going to fight this war. Then the moment he sees all this Bhishma, Drona and all that, he completely loses everything. And then he wants to get out of the war. And he is trying to convince Krishna, who is his close friend and who is there with him in the war side. He is trying to convince him as to why, if he kills all these people, what will happen. And he is talking about, confusion happening and people all dying, male people dying, females getting into all sorts of problems and all that. So many arguments he gives. Krishna, of course, rebukes him, keeps quiet. Krishna is an embodiment of Vedanta. He could have told Arjuna, he could have started when all this confusion was there, he could have told Arjuna, sit down, I will tell you what exactly all this is about. I will teach you Vedanta. But he doesn't do that. He keeps on correcting Arjuna and everything. Ultimately, in the second chapter, when Arjuna says, he surrenders to Krishna, Shishyasteham Shadimam Mam Prapannam. I am surrendering to you, I am taking you as my guru, I am your Shishya, student, please teach me. When that he says, then only Krishna starts in the 11th sloka of the second chapter, Ashocyan Anmashochastva. So till that time, even Krishna, who knew everything about Vedanta, everything about self-knowledge, did not open his mouth till he was asked for by Arjuna. So that is a classic example we can follow, that unless you are asked for anything, don't open your mouth. So that is a very, very important lesson, or we must imbibe a quality in us. And that's why if we are generously giving out all our advices, it may fall on deaf ears or it may prove futile. And that's why Shankaracharya says, Vrita Vakyam na samucharyatam, keep your mouth shut. When you are asked, you talk. Right? Of course, all these solutions, they all work in managing our stress to some extent, to a large extent, I would say. But they don't give you the permanent solution for stress-free living. And the permanent solution for stress-free living is there only one in Advaita Vedanta. That is, once we know, because all these situations is happening because of the ignorance of our real self. Once we understand and assimilate the nature of our real self, that is the permanent solution for a stress-free living. And that lies in gaining that knowledge, the self-knowledge, and assimilating that knowledge. Not only you must get that knowledge, but you must also live that knowledge. And that is what is the core message of all our ancient spiritual, teachings and texts. And as Swami Vivekananda, famous quote is there from Kathopanishad, which goes, Uttishta Jagrata Prapya Varan Nibodhata. Awake, arise, and stop not till the goal is reached. So with these words, I will stop my talk. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you very much, all of you, for patiently listening to me.